The first time I heard them laughing in Polish, I was arranging pierogi on my grandmother's antique serving platter. My hands froze mid-motion as my mother-in-law's voice drifted through the kitchen doorway, sharp and mocking in a language she assumed I couldn't understand. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Look at her, trying so hard with the food, as if store-bought cabbage rolls will impress anyone. I stood there, the ceramic cool against my palms, every muscle in my body rigid. 8 months of Sunday dinners, 8 months of smiles that never reached their eyes. 8 months of comments I'd pretended not to comprehend, while my grandmother's voice echoed in my memory, teaching me the same words in the same tongue when I was just a child sitting on her kitchen counter in Chicago. My husband Derek entered the kitchen, oblivious as always, pressing a kiss to my temple. "They're getting restless out there, babe. Almost ready?" I painted on my perfected smile, the one I'd been wearing since the day I met his family. "Just a few more minutes." He grabbed a beer from the fridge and disappeared back into the dining room, leaving me alone with the weight of their secret conversations. I could hear his sister Kasia now, her voice carrying that particular tone of amusement reserved for discussing me. 9 miesięcy I nadal nie wie, jak trzymać widelec jak prawdziwa Polka. 9 months, and she still doesn't know how to hold a fork like a real Polish woman. My grandmother would have laughed at that. Babcia Zofia, who'd emigrated from Krakow in 1952, who'd taught me every tradition, every recipe, every word of Polish she could pack into my young mind before my mother decided we needed to be more American. Before my mother changed our last name from Kowalski to Kennedy, erasing half of who we were with a single court filing. I was 7 when Babcia died. 7 when my mother forbade Polish in our house, claiming it would hold me back. "You're American now, Maya," she'd said, boxing up Babcia's things. "That old-world nonsense won't help you succeed." But Babcia's lessons had burrowed deep, hibernating in my mind for 23 years. And now, standing in the kitchen of the home I shared with Derek, every word was crystallizing with perfect clarity. I lifted the platter and walked into the dining room with measured steps. Derek's family was gathered around our table. Correction, around Derek's family's heirloom table, the one his mother had insisted we use because it carries the family history. The irony of that statement wasn't lost on me now. "Maya, finally!" Derek's father, Tomasz, boomed in his thickly accented English. He was the only one who tried to be kind, though even his warmth felt conditional. "We are starving here. Sorry to keep you waiting." I set the platter down, noting how his mother, Barbara, inspected my offering with barely concealed disdain. "Store-bought?" she asked in English, her eyebrow arched. "Homemade," I replied smoothly. "I started them this morning." The lie came easily. They were indeed store-bought, but only because I'd spent my morning doing something far more important than proving my domestic worth. I'd been on a video call with my lawyer, finalizing documents that would change everything. Kasia reached for a pierogi, examining it like a jeweler appraising a suspicious diamond. "Interesting shape," she said in English, then switched to Polish as she glanced at her mother. "Wyglądają jak coś, co kupiłaby w Walmart." They look like something she'd buy at Walmart. Barbara covered her laugh with a napkin. "Kasia, bądź miła." "Kasia, be nice." But Kasia wasn't done. As we began eating, she continued her commentary in Polish, assuming I was deaf to every word. "Remember when Derek dated Magdalena? Now she could cook. Real Polish food, not this American interpretation. Magdalena understood family," Barbara added in Polish, her fork clicking against her plate. "This one, she smiles and nods, but she doesn't understand anything. Not our language, not our culture. Nothing." Derek's younger brother Piotr chimed in. "At least she's pretty, that's something." Pretty doesn't keep a marriage strong, Barbara said, still in Polish. Pretty doesn't understand sacrifice or tradition. Pretty doesn't give you Polish grandchildren who know where they come from. I continued eating, my face a mask of pleasant ignorance, while inside I catalogued every word. These weren't just casual insults anymore. Over 8 months, they'd evolved into something more calculated, more cruel. They'd discussed my weight, my career, my inability to give Derek children yet. They'd speculated about how long the marriage would last. They'd made bets on when he'd wake up and find someone more suitable, someone more like them. Maya, Tomasz said in English, pulling me from my thoughts. How is work? Derek says you are very busy with your company. It's going well, thank you. I smiled at him, grateful for the small kindness. We just secured a major contract with a European firm, actually. European? Barbara perked up, switching to English. Which country? Poland, primarily, based in Warsaw, but with offices throughout the country. The table went quiet. I could feel Derek's surprise. I'd only finalized the deal yesterday and hadn't told him yet. But I watched his mother's face carefully, saw the micro-expressions that betrayed her thoughts. Poland, she repeated. And what does this company do? Cultural consulting and translation services. They help American companies expand into Polish markets, navigate the business culture, avoid misunderstandings. Barbara's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Something in my tone must have registered. Some subtle shift that made her eyes narrow, slightly. That's amazing, babe. Derek squeezed my hand. Why didn't you tell me? It just came through yesterday. I wanted to be sure before I said anything. I turned to Barbara. Actually, the CEO mentioned they're always looking for cultural advisors. People who understand both American and Polish perspectives. I thought of you immediately. It was a perfectly laid trap, baited with the kind of opportunity Barbara couldn't resist. She'd been complaining for months about her part-time job at the Polish Cultural Center, how they didn't appreciate her expertise. Really? She tried to sound casual, but I could see the interest sparking. What would this involve? Oh, consulting mostly. Helping American executives understand Polish business etiquette, family dynamics, social expectations. The CEO was very specific. They need someone who understands how Polish families operate, especially the more traditional ones. Kasia leaned forward. How much does it pay? Kasia? Derek looked embarrassed. That's not appropriate. No, it's fine. I smiled at her. The CEO mentioned around $80,000 a year for the right person, plus travel to Warsaw twice a year for training sessions. Barbara's water glass trembled slightly in her hand. $80,000 was more than she made in 2 years at the Cultural Center. I could arrange an introduction, I continued, my voice honey-sweet. If you're interested, of course. The CEO is coming to Chicago next month. We're having dinner to discuss the partnership. I'm sure she'd love to meet you. She? Barbara's English was suddenly very focused. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Yes, Zofia Kowalski. She inherited the company from her mother, who built it from nothing after immigrating in the 50s. Quite an inspiring story, actually. I watched the name land like a stone in still water. Kowalski, one of the most common Polish surnames, but I'd chosen it deliberately. A small hint of what was coming, though they couldn't possibly understand yet. The conversation shifted after that, but I could feel Barbara's mind working, calculating. Derek talked about his work. Piotr complained about his girlfriend, and Kasia showed everyone photos from her latest trip to Gdansk. But through it all, Barbara's eyes kept returning to me, suspicious and curious in equal measure. When dinner ended and we moved to the living room for coffee, I excused myself to take a phone call. In my home office, The room Derek's family had insisted should be his study, though I'd quietly claimed it. I stood by the window overlooking our backyard. My phone was already in my hand, but I wasn't making a call. I was reviewing the document I'd received that morning. The genealogy report had taken 6 months to compile. 6 months of working with researchers in Poland and Chicago, tracing my family line back, through decades of immigration records, church documents, and military archives. The evidence was irrefutable. I was half Polish, descended from a family with deeper roots in Krakow than the Kowalskis could dream of. My grandmother's maiden name had been Zawadzka. Her family had owned a printing press in Krakow before the war, had survived the occupation, had rebuilt from ashes. They'd been scholars, artists, resistance fighters. And when Babcia came to America, she'd carried all of that history with her, pressing it into my young mind like flowers in a book, preserving it for the day I might need it. That day was coming. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. "Maya?" Derek's voice. "Mom wants to know if you have that company's contact information. She's actually really interested." I opened the door, finding my husband's face bright with an excitement I hadn't seen in months. "That's great about the Poland deal," he said, pulling me into a hug. "Why didn't you tell me you were working on something that big?" "I wanted to be sure first. You know how deals can fall through." "Still." He pulled back, studying my face. "We're married. You can tell me these things. We're partners." Partners. The word sat bitter in my mouth. Partners didn't let their families mock their spouses every Sunday. Partners didn't laugh along when their mother made jokes in another language, assuming their wife couldn't understand. But I smiled and nodded, playing the role I'd perfected. "You're right. I'll do better." "Mom's really excited about this opportunity," he continued. "She's been wanting to do something more meaningful with her language skills. This could be perfect for her." "I hope so," I said, and meant it in ways he couldn't begin to understand. We returned to the living room where Barbara was holding court, already planning her future career. "When exactly is this CEO visiting?" she asked me in English, her accent thick with excitement. "The first week of October. I'll have my assistant send you the details once everything's confirmed." "October," she repeated, then switched to Polish, speaking to Kasia. "To będzie idealne. Wreszcie praca, która doceni moje umiejętności. This will be perfect. Finally, a job that appreciates my skills." Kasia nodded enthusiastically, responding in Polish. "A może wtedy Maja zrozumie, jak ważna jest rodzina, kiedy mama będzie pracować z jej firmą. And maybe then Maya will understand how important family is, when mom is working with her company." I sipped my coffee, letting them plan, letting them dream. They had no idea that Zofia Kowalski wasn't just any CEO. She was my second cousin, tracked down through months of genealogical research. She was family, real family, Polish family, who'd been delighted to help me orchestrate what was coming. The evening wound down with the usual rituals. Barbara packed up the leftovers in containers, criticizing my storage system in Polish while smiling at me in English. Kasia hugged me goodbye with that particular warmth reserved for people you pity. Piotr barely acknowledged me, and Tomasz, kind Tomasz, squeezed my shoulder and told me in English that I was doing a good job, which somehow felt worse than the insults I understood, and he didn't know I did. After they left, Derek and I cleaned up together in companionable silence. He was humming, happy in a way I hadn't seen since before our wedding. The Poland deal had excited him, not for me, I realized, but for the opportunity it gave his mother. "I think Mom's really going to go for this," he said, loading the dishwasher. "It could be really good for her, and for us." "How so?" "Well, if she's working with your company, she'll have to respect what you do more. Right now, I think she just doesn't understand your work. This could bridge that gap." I turned to face him, studying the man I'd married. Derek was handsome in that all-American way. Square jaw, athletic build, confident smile. We'd met at a networking event 2 years ago, and he'd pursued me with the kind of determined charm that felt flattering at first. He worked in finance, made good money, and seemed genuinely interested in my business. But he'd also made it clear from the start that family was everything to him. His Polish family, with their traditions, and their tight-knit dinners, and their exclusive language. I'd thought I could handle it. I'd thought love would be enough to weather the storm of their subtle disapproval. I'd been wrong. "Derek," I said carefully, "do you ever notice how your family acts around me?" He looked up from the plates, confused. "What do you mean? They love you." "Do they?" "Of course they do. Mom's always inviting us over. Kasia includes you in everything, and Dad thinks you're great." I wanted to laugh, or cry, or scream. Instead, I just nodded. "You're right. I'm probably just tired." He came over and wrapped his arms around me, resting his chin on my head. "The business stress getting to you?" "Something like that." "Well, once this Poland thing is set up, maybe you can relax a little. Take a vacation. We could even visit Poland together. Mom would love to show you around Krakow, where her grandparents lived." Krakow, where my great-grandparents had owned their printing press. Where my family name had meant something before it was erased by immigration and assimilation. "That sounds nice," I murmured into his chest, feeling the weight of all my secrets pressing down like stones. That night, I lay awake long after Derek fell asleep, staring at the ceiling and listening to his steady breathing. In 1 month, everything would change. In 1 month, Zofia would arrive from Warsaw, and we would have our dinner. And Derek's family would learn exactly who I was. But before then, I had work to do. The next morning, after Derek left for work, I opened my laptop and reviewed the plan one more time. Phase 1 was already complete. The genealogy research, the connection with Zofia, the job opportunity dangled before Barbara like bait before a fish. Phase 2 would begin this week, the documentary evidence. I'd hired a team of translators, discreet, professional, bound by airtight NDAs, to transcribe and translate every Sunday dinner I'd recorded over the past 8 months. Yes, recorded. Every single one. The tiny device disguised as a decorative button on my cardigan had captured every Polish insult, every mocking laugh, every cruel observation they'd thought I couldn't understand. The transcripts sat in a folder on my desktop, organized by date. I opened the most recent one, from yesterday's dinner, and read through their comments in both Polish and English. Seeing it written out made it worse somehow. The calculated cruelty of it. The way they'd built an entire parallel conversation around me, treating me like a decoration that couldn't hear or feel or understand. My phone rang. Zofia. "Dzień dobry, kuzynko," she greeted me in Polish. "Good morning, cousin." "Dzień dobry," I replied in the same language, feeling the words settle into my mouth like coming home. "Wszystko gotowe? Is everything ready?" "Almost. I've arranged meetings with 3 other companies while I'm in Chicago, so the trip looks legitimate. And I've prepared the presentation about your family history. Our family history. Maya, are you absolutely sure about this? Once we do this, there's no going back." I thought about Barbara's laugh yesterday, about Kasia's dismissive comments, about 8 months of being treated like an outsider in my own marriage, in my own home. "I'm sure." "Dobrze. Your grandmother would be proud, you know. Babcia Zofia, my great-aunt, she used to tell us about her granddaughter in America. She said you were the smartest of all of us, that you understood things deeply. She would want you to reclaim this part of yourself." Tears pricked my eyes. I miss her. I know, but she's with us in this, every step. After we hung up, I sat for a long moment, remembering Babcia's kitchen. The smell of bigos simmering on the stove. her wrinkled hands guiding mine as we rolled out dough for pierogi. Her voice, patient and loving, teaching me words in Polish while my mother was at work. Pamiętaj, kochanie, she used to say. Remember, darling. Nie można uciec od tego, kim jesteś. Możesz to ukryć, ale zawsze będzie częścią ciebie. You can't run from who you are. You can hide it, but it will always be part of you. I'd hidden it for 23 years. Now it was time to remember. The week passed in careful preparation. I met with my lawyer to review the prenuptial agreement Derek and I had signed. A document his mother had insisted on, drafted to protect family assets that were actually mostly mine. The irony would be delicious when certain truths came out. I also began attending Polish language classes, publicly now, no longer hiding my fluency. When Derek asked about it, I told him I wanted to connect with his family better. He'd been thrilled, had immediately called his mother to share the news. "That's wonderful," Barbara had said in English when he put her on speaker. "Maya, I'm so pleased you want to learn our language. It's not easy, but if you work hard, maybe someday you'll understand us better." "I hope so," I'd replied, catching my reflection in the hallway mirror. My smile was serene, but my eyes held secrets she couldn't imagine. The following Sunday, I arrived at Derek's family home. They insisted on hosting, never letting us reciprocate, with a new dish. Bigos, made from my grandmother's recipe, the one she'd written in Polish in her recipe book, the one I'd kept hidden in a box of her belongings my mother hadn't destroyed. Barbara opened the door, her eyes widening at the pot I carried. "What's this?" "Bigos," I said simply. "I found a recipe online and thought I'd try it. I know it's traditional." She took the pot, inhaling deeply, and I saw something flicker across her face. Confusion, maybe. Or recognition. The smell was authentic, carried the depth of hours-long cooking, layers of flavor that couldn't be faked or store-bought. At dinner, when she served it, the table went quiet. Derek's family tasted it slowly, carefully, and I watched their faces transform. "This is..." Tomasz started in English, then switched to Polish without thinking. "To smakuje dokładnie tak, jak robiła moja matka." "This tastes exactly like my mother used to make." Barbara looked at me sharply, then at the bigos, then back at me. "Where did you find this recipe?" "A Polish cooking blog," I lied smoothly. "The author said it was her grandmother's recipe from Krakow. I thought you might like it." "Krakow," Barbara repeated, and something in her voice made me look up. She was studying me with new eyes, as if seeing something she'd missed before. Kasia broke the moment. "It's good," she admitted in English, then added in Polish, "Może w końcu się uczy." Maybe she's finally learning. "Ucz się czego?" I asked quietly in perfect Polish. "What am I learning?" The room froze. Every fork stopped. Every conversation died. They all stared at me. Barbara with her mouth half open, Kasia with her eyes wide, Piotr with his water glass suspended in midair. Even Derek looked shocked, though for different reasons. "You?" Barbara started, then stopped. "Mówisz po polsku?" "You speak Polish?" "Tak," I replied calmly, folding my napkin in my lap. "Mówię po polsku od dzieciństwa. Moja babcia mnie nauczyła." "Yes, I've spoken Polish since childhood. My grandmother taught me." The silence stretched like taffy, pulling tighter and tighter until I thought it might snap. Derek found his voice first. "Maya, you speak Polish? Why didn't you tell me?" I turned to him, and in that moment, I let every Sunday dinner, every insult, every mocking laugh show in my eyes. "Because," I said in English, my voice steady and cold, "I wanted to understand what your family really thought of me." Barbara's face drained of color. Kasia's hand trembled around her fork. Even Tomasz, kind Tomasz, looked stricken. "For 8 months," I continued, still in English so Derek would understand every word. I've listened to your family insult me in Polish. Every Sunday. Every comment about my cooking, my appearance, my career, my worth as a wife. Every joke about how long our marriage will last. Every speculation about when Derek will leave me for someone more suitable. Maya, Barbara started, but I held up my hand. Nie, I said sharply in Polish. Skończyłaś mówić, teraz ja mówię. No, you're done talking, now I'm talking. I stood up from the table, my chair scraping against the floor. My name is Maya Kennedy, but my grandmother's name was Zofia Zawadzka. She came from Krakow in 1952, from a family that owned a printing press before the war. She survived the occupation, rebuilt from nothing, and came to America with her culture intact. I pulled out my phone and opened the genealogy report. She taught me Polish when I was a child. Every word, every tradition, every recipe, including the bigos you're eating right now, which has been in my family for 4 generations. But when she died, my mother decided we needed to be more American. She changed our name, forbade Polish in our house, and tried to erase half of who I was. Barbara's hands were shaking now. Why didn't you say something? Because I wanted to see who you really were, I replied. I wanted to know if Derek's family would accept me for me, or if they would always see me as the American girl who wasn't good enough, who couldn't understand, who would never truly be part of the family. I looked at each of them in turn, and now I know. Derek stood up, his face a mixture of confusion and anger. Mom, what is she talking about? What did you say to her? Barbara couldn't meet his eyes. Neither could Kasia. Piotr was staring at his plate, and Tomasz looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. Everything, I said quietly. They said everything, Derek. And I understood every word. I picked up my purse and walked toward the door. Derek followed me, grabbing my arm. Maya, wait. Please. I didn't know. I know you didn't know, I said, my voice softer now. That's part of the problem. You never noticed. You never questioned why they always spoke in Polish around me. You never wondered if their laughter was at my expense. I'll talk to them. I'll fix this. It's not yours to fix. I pulled my arm free gently. This is between me and them, and it's not over yet. I left him standing in the doorway and drove home alone, my hands steady on the wheel even as my heart pounded. The first revelation was complete, but it was only the beginning. When I got home, I went straight to my office and opened my laptop. Zofia had sent an email. Arriving Chicago, October 3rd. Hotel. Confirmed. Dinner reservations at Bohemian House at 7 p.m. Guest list? I began typing. Derek and his entire family. My lawyer. 3 colleagues from my company who spoke Polish. And one very special guest I'd been saving for exactly this moment. My mother. It was time for her to remember too. The next 3 weeks were the longest of my life. Derek tried to apologize on behalf of his family, but I could see the doubt creeping into his eyes. He'd called his mother, had a conversation I wasn't privy to, and come home looking shaken. They said it was just jokes, he told me that night. They said they didn't mean anything by it. Did they tell you what they said? I asked. He hesitated. Some of it. And do you think those were just jokes? He couldn't answer. We slept in the same bed but miles apart, the silence between us louder than any argument. Barbara called me once. I let it go to voicemail. She called again and again. Finally, I answered. Maya, please, she said in English, her voice thick with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. I want to apologize. We were wrong. So wrong. Can we meet? Can we talk? We'll talk, I said. October 3rd. There's someone I want you to meet. Who? Her name is Zofia Kowalski. I think you'll find you have a lot in common. I hung up before she could respond. September bled into October. The leaves turned gold and crimson outside my office window. My company's partnership with Zofia's firm was finalized. Contracts signed. Press releases drafted. Everything was falling into place. The night before the dinner, I couldn't sleep. I stood in my office at 2 a.m. reviewing the presentation one more time. Photos of my grandmother. Documents tracing our family line. Translations of every insult, every mock, every cruel joke from 8 months of Sunday dinners. And at the end, a single slide with a question in both English and Polish. Czy rodzina jest ważniejsza niż prawda? Is family more important than truth? My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. I don't understand why you want me at this dinner. We haven't spoken about your grandmother in years. I typed back. It's time we did. Morning came too slowly and too fast. I dressed carefully in a navy suit, professional and polished. Derek had taken the day off work, pacing our house like a caged animal. Maya, what's going to happen tonight? The truth, I said simply. Just the truth. At 6:30 p.m. we arrived at Bohemian House, an upscale Polish restaurant in Lincoln Square. The private dining room I'd reserved was elegant, white tablecloths, crystal glasses, candles flickering on every surface. Derek's family arrived first. Barbara wore black, as if attending a funeral. Maybe she was. Kasia looked nervous. Piotr sullen. Tomasz gave me a sad smile that almost broke my composure. My mother arrived next, confused and uncomfortable. She hadn't been in a Polish restaurant since Babcia's funeral. Then came my colleagues, the translators, my lawyer. And finally, at exactly 7 p.m., Zofia walked through the door. She was 72, silver-haired and elegant, with Babcia's eyes and Babcia's cheekbones. She wore traditional Polish jewelry and carried herself like royalty. When she saw me, her face lit up with genuine warmth. Kuzynko, she said, embracing me and kissing both my cheeks. Cousin. Barbara's mouth fell open. Everyone, I said in English, then repeated in Polish. I'd like you to meet my family. Zofia Zawadzka-Kowalski, my grandmother's brother's daughter, my second cousin, and the CEO of the company I've been telling you about. Zofia smiled at the assembled group, then began speaking in rapid Polish, which I translated for those who needed it. I'm so pleased to meet you all. Maya has told me so much about her life here in America, about her marriage, about her Sundays with family. She emphasized that last word just slightly, and I saw Barbara flinch. When Maya contacted me last year, searching for her Polish roots, I was overjoyed. You see, my Aunt Zofia, Maya's grandmother, spoke of her often before she passed. She worried that Maya would lose her heritage, that her daughter's shame about being Polish would erase generations of family history. My mother's face went white. But Maya didn't forget, Zofia continued. She kept every lesson, every word, every tradition alive in her heart. And now, she's asked me to help her reclaim what was taken from her, what she was forced to hide. I pulled out the folder then, the one with all the translations. I have something to share, I said, my voice calm despite my racing heart. A record of the past 8 months. In the interest of truth and family, I think everyone should hear what was really said at those Sunday dinners. Barbara stood up abruptly. Maya, please, don't do this. Sit down, Barbara, I said in Polish. Zasługujesz na to, żeby usłyszeć własne słowa. You deserve to hear your own words. What happened next would change everything. But as I opened the folder and began to read, I felt Babcia's presence beside me, her hand on my shoulder, her voice whispering in Polish. Prawda zawsze wychodzi na jaw, kochanie. Zawsze. The truth always comes out, darling. Always. Part 2, Final. I opened the folder, and the room held its breath. The candlelight flickered across the pages of translated conversations. 8 months of carefully documented cruelty waiting to be exposed. August 15th. I began, my voice steady. Barbara said in Polish, "She'll never be one of us. Look at her, smiling like she understands. It's almost sad how hard she tries." Barbara's face crumbled, but I continued. August 22nd. Kasia. I give them 2 years before Derek realizes his mistake. Magdalena would have given him Polish children by now. Kasia looked away, tears forming in her eyes. September 5th. Barbara again. At least she's decorative. That's all American girls are good for. Looking pretty and spending money. Derek's hand found the table for support, his knuckles white. "Mom, you said these things?" But I wasn't finished. I flipped through pages, reading date after date, insult after insult. The room grew smaller with each word, the air thicker. My mother sat frozen, understanding now why I'd insisted she come. Understanding what she'd taken from me when she'd forbidden Polish in our home. After 10 minutes of reading, I closed the folder. "There are 37 more pages," I said quietly. "But I think you understand the point." Zofia spoke then, her voice gentle but firm. "In Poland, we have a saying, nie ma tego złego, coby na dobre nie wyszło. There is nothing so bad that good cannot come from it. Maya, your grandmother would be proud of how you've handled this. Not with anger, but with dignity. Not with revenge, but with truth." Barbara finally found her voice, speaking in broken English through tears. "I was wrong. So wrong. Maya, I was threatened by you. You were educated, successful, American in ways I could never be. I thought if I couldn't understand you, I could at least control how my son saw you." "By making him see me as less than I am?" I asked. "Yes." She buried her face in her hands. "Yes, and I hate myself for it." Kasia spoke up, her voice small. We thought because you didn't speak Polish, you were rejecting us, rejecting our culture. We didn't know you were half Polish. We didn't know your grandmother." "You didn't ask," I said simply. "In 8 months, not one of you asked about my family, my background, my heritage. You just assumed." Tomasz cleared his throat, speaking in Polish. "Maya, I knew something was wrong. I saw how they treated you, heard some of the comments. I should have stopped it. I should have defended you. I'm ashamed that I stayed silent." His honesty cracked something in my chest. "Thank you," I said softly. Derek stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. "I need air." He walked out of the private room, and I let him go. This wasn't about him, not really. This was about reclaiming the part of myself I'd buried to make others comfortable. My mother spoke for the first time, her voice shaking. "Maya, I did this to you. I took away your grandmother's language because I was ashamed. Ashamed of being poor immigrants, of my accent, of how the American kids teased me. I thought I was protecting you, but I just passed my shame onto you." I looked at her across the table. This woman who'd raised me, who'd worked 2 jobs to give me opportunities, who'd erased half my heritage because she thought it would save me from pain. "I know, Mom," I said. "I understand why you did it. But understanding doesn't mean it didn't hurt." Zofia reached across and took both of our hands. "Family," she said in English, her accent thick but her meaning clear, "is not just blood, is not just language, is understanding, respect, seeing each other truly. Maya, you have Polish family now. In Warsaw, in Krakow, in Chicago. You are not alone anymore." The translator I'd hired, a woman named Helena who'd done most of the transcription work, spoke up. "If I may," she said in Polish, "I've been translating for 20 years. I've heard many conversations. But these," she gestured to the folder, "these were particularly painful to document. Not because of the language, but because of the intentional exclusion. Language should build bridges, not walls. Barbara nodded, wiping her eyes. You're right. We built walls, high walls, and we trapped ourselves inside them. She looked at me directly. Maya, I know I can't undo 8 months of cruelty, but I want to try. I want to know you, really know you. Your grandmother, your family, your Polish side that we never saw. I want that too, Kasia added quickly. I was jealous. You have everything, education, career, Derek's love. And you did it all without family connections, without speaking Polish, without any of the things we thought made us special. I felt threatened. Being threatened doesn't excuse cruelty, I said, but my voice was softer now. But it explains it. An explanation is a start. Derek returned then, his eyes red. He walked directly to me, kneeling beside my chair. Maya, I failed you. I should have paid attention. I should have noticed. I let my family treat you like an outsider in your own marriage, and I did nothing. You didn't know? I should have known, he insisted. A husband should notice when his wife is hurting. I was so wrapped up in keeping everyone happy that I didn't see I was sacrificing you to do it. I touched his face gently. What happens now? I asked. Where do we go from here? Therapy, he said immediately. Couples therapy and family therapy. Whatever it takes. Because I love you, Maya. I love you, and I want to know all of you. The American side, the Polish side, all of it. I want to learn Polish. I want to visit Krakow and see where your family came from. I want to do this right. I looked around the table at the assembled faces. My mother, guilty and grieving. Barbara, broken and remorseful. Kasia, ashamed. Piotr, who'd barely spoken but whose face showed his own regret. Tomasz, sad but hopeful. My colleagues witnessing this family fracture and tentative repair. And Zofia, my newfound cousin, representing the family I'd thought was lost forever. Here's what I need, I said finally. Complete honesty. No more Polish conversations that exclude people. No more assumptions. No more letting family loyalty override basic respect. Yes, Barbara said immediately. Anything. And I need acknowledgement, I continued. Real acknowledgement of the harm that was done. Not just we were joking or we didn't mean it. You meant it. You said cruel things about me for 8 months. That happened, and it hurt. It happened, Barbara repeated. We were cruel. We excluded you intentionally. We mocked you, and it was wrong. Completely, absolutely wrong. Kasia nodded. We were wrong. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Piotr finally spoke. I didn't say as much as Mom and Kasia, but I didn't stop it either. That makes me guilty too. I'm sorry, Maya. I took a deep breath. Okay, then here's what happens next. Zofia has agreed to stay in Chicago for 2 weeks. During that time, I want us all to have dinner together, but different. I want Mom to share stories about Babsia, about our family history. I want to teach all of you about the Zawatsky family, about what we survived, what we built. I turned to Derek's family. And I want you to understand that being Polish isn't about gatekeeping or exclusion. It's about heritage, yes, but also about opening doors, sharing culture, building bridges. If you really want to honor your ancestry, then honor it by being welcoming, not by keeping others out. Zofia squeezed my hand. And I will help. I brought documents, photos, family histories, Maya's grandmother, my aunt. She left us with so much. Stories of the printing press, of the resistance during the war, of rebuilding after. These stories belong to Maya, but they also belong to anyone who wants to understand where she comes from. My mother spoke up, her voice stronger now. I have boxes. In my attic. Your grandmother's things that I couldn't bring myself to throw away but couldn't look at either. Her recipe books, photo albums, letters from Poland. It's all there, Maya. Waiting for you. Something loosened in my chest. A knot I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Really? Really. I was wrong to try to erase her. I was wrong to make you ashamed of being Polish. I let my own pain dictate your identity, and that was unfair. It was cruel in its own way. I stood up, moving around the table to embrace her. She held me tight, and I felt her tears on my shoulder. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "I know, Mom. I know." The dinner continued, but the tone had shifted entirely. Zofia began telling stories about our family in Poland, about the printing press that had published underground newspapers during the occupation, about my great-grandmother who'd hidden Jewish families in their basement. Barbara listened with genuine interest, asking questions, making connections to her own family's history. Derek sat beside me, his hand never leaving mine, occasionally asking questions in his broken, earnest attempts at Polish. Kasia asked Zofia about Warsaw, about opportunities there, about the culture. Even Piotr engaged, discussing Polish football with unexpected enthusiasm. My mother pulled out her phone, scrolling through old photos she'd digitized. "Look," she said, showing me a picture of Babsia in her kitchen, flour on her hands, smiling at the camera. "This was the day she taught you to make pierogi. You were 5 years old, and you insisted on doing it all yourself." I stared at the photo, remembering her patient hands, her soft voice, her way of making me feel like the most important person in the world. "She loved you so much," my mother continued. "She used to say you had her mother's eyes, her determination. She said you were going to do great things, be someone who bridged worlds." "She was right," Zofia said. "Look at what you've built, Maya. Your company, your life, your courage to face this situation with such grace. You are bridging worlds, American and Polish, old and new, hurt and healing." As the evening wore on, Helena the translator shared her own story of immigration, of language loss and recovery. My colleagues talked about the importance of cultural preservation while avoiding cultural gatekeeping. The conversation flowed in English and Polish, back and forth, building the bridges I'd asked for. Around 10 p.m., Tomasz raised his glass. "I would like to make a toast," he said in English, "to Maya, who taught us that family is not about blood or language or tradition alone, is about respect, is about truth, is about seeing each other as we really are. Maya, thank you for your courage. Thank you for not giving up on us, even when we gave you every reason to." Everyone raised their glasses. "To Maya," they chorused. I raised mine in return. "To Babcia Zofia," I said, "who knew I would need her lessons someday, who gave me the tools to reclaim myself, and to all of us, may we do better going forward." "Na zdrowie," Zofia said. "To health." "Na zdrowie," the table echoed. As we left the restaurant, Barbara approached me hesitantly. "Maya, that job opportunity you mentioned, the consulting position, was that real?" I smiled. "Yes, it's real. Zofia's company really does need cultural advisors. But I won't lie, I also used it as bait. I wanted you here tonight. I wanted you to meet Zofia, to understand who I really am." "I deserved that," she said. "The manipulation. After what we did—" "It wasn't manipulation," I corrected gently. "It was truth, just revealed strategically. And the job offer stands, if you want it. But Barbara, if you take it, you have to understand. It means being a bridge, not a gatekeeper. It means helping people connect with Polish culture, not excluding them from it." She nodded slowly. "I understand. And I want to try. I want to be better." "Then we'll talk more," I said. After you've had time to think about everything that happened tonight. Derek and I drove home in silence, but it was a different kind of silence than before. Not distance, but processing. In our driveway, before we got out of the car, he turned to me. "I need you to know something," he said. "I'm angry at my family. I'm angry at myself, but I'm also grateful." Grateful? That you didn't just leave. That you didn't just divorce me and walk away, which would have been completely justified. You gave us a chance to see the truth, to face it, to do better. That took incredible strength and incredible grace. I leaned my head on his shoulder. "I love you, Derek. That's why I stayed. That's why I wanted to fix this instead of just ending it. But love isn't enough if there's no respect, no awareness, no willingness to change. I know, and I'm going to change. We're going to change. All of us." He kissed the top of my head. "Starting with me learning Polish properly. I want to be able to speak with Zofia, with your family, in their language. Our language now." "Our language," I repeated and smiled. Inside our house, I went straight to my office and called Zofia. "How do you think it went?" I asked in Polish. "Better than expected," she replied. "Your mother-in-law is broken but not beyond repair. Your husband is shaken but committed. This is good, Maya. This is how real change begins, with truth that hurts before it heals." "Babsha would have handled it differently," I said. "She would have been kinder." "Maybe," Zofia said. "Or maybe she would have done exactly what you did. She was tough, my aunt. She survived the war, immigration, poverty, discrimination. She knew when to be soft and when to be steel. Tonight, you needed to be steel. Tomorrow, you can be soft again." After we hung up, I sat at my desk and pulled out the old photo album my mother had promised to give me. She'd brought it to the restaurant, pressed it into my hands before we left. I opened it now, running my fingers over pictures of people I'd never met but whose blood ran in my veins. Great-grandmother Zawadzka at the printing press, ink on her fingers, defiance in her eyes. My grandfather as a young man, standing in front of the family home in Krakow before the war destroyed it. Babcia on the ship to America, holding onto the railing, looking back at Poland with tears on her face. And at the end, a photo I'd never seen before. Babcia holding me as a baby, whispering something in my ear. On the back, in her handwriting, "Maya Zofia Kennedy Kowalski, age 3 months. I told her she would be strong like her great-grandmother, wise like her grandmother, and brave enough to be herself in any language. I told her she was loved." The tears came then, finally. I cried for the grandmother I'd lost too soon, for the years I'd hidden who I was, for the hurt and the healing both. I cried for my mother's shame and my mother-in-law's cruelty and my own loneliness through 8 months of Sunday dinners. But I also cried with relief. Because I'd done it. I'd spoken up. I'd reclaimed my heritage, my language, my identity. I'd demanded to be seen, truly seen, and I'd been strong enough to wait for that recognition instead of just walking away. Derek found me there an hour later, tears dried on my face, surrounded by photos of ancestors. He sat beside me silently, looking at each picture I showed him, asking questions, learning names, beginning the long process of understanding where I came from. "This is your great-grandmother?" he asked, pointing to the woman at the printing press. "Yes. Anna Zawadzka. She published resistance newspapers under the Nazis' noses. She was arrested twice and survived both times." "She looks like you," he said. Same determined expression. "Babcia always said I had her stubbornness." I smiled through new tears. I guess she was right. We sat together until midnight, building the bridge between his understanding and my history, one photo at a time. It wasn't forgiveness yet. That would take time, therapy, consistent change. But it was a start. The next morning, I woke to find Derek in the kitchen, attempting to make pierogi from a Polish recipe website, getting everything wrong but trying so earnestly that I had to laugh. "Okay," I said, tying on an apron. "Let me show you how Babsia taught me." As we rolled out dough together, my hands guiding his, I felt her presence again. Felt her approval, her love, her certainty that I would find my way back to this moment. "Pamiętaj kochanie," I whispered in Polish, knowing Derek wouldn't understand yet but would someday. "Nigdy nie uciekaj od tego, kim jesteś." Never run from who you are. And I never would, again. Epilogue. 3 months later, Derek and I stood in Krakow's old town square, bundled against the December cold. Zofia walked beside us, pointing out landmarks, telling stories. My mother had stayed home. The trip was too much for her, she said, though I think the real reason was that she needed more time to process her own relationship with Poland. But Barbara had come. And Kazia. They'd both taken positions with Zofia's company, were learning to be bridges instead of walls. It wasn't perfect. Kazia still sometimes made thoughtless comments. Barbara still struggled with control. But they were trying. Really trying. We visited the site where the Zawadzki printing press had stood before the war. Nothing remained but a plaque and memories. But I stood there and felt connected to something larger than myself. That evening, at a family dinner with Polish cousins I'd never met before, I looked around the table and saw it. Acceptance. Real acceptance, based on truth and choice rather than assumption and obligation. Derek squeezed my hand under the table, whispered in his heavily accented Polish, "Kocham ci." "I love you." "Kocham cię również," I whispered back. "I love you too." And for the first time in 8 months of Sundays, I felt completely, authentically seen. The journey wasn't over. Healing never is. But I'd reclaimed the part of myself I'd buried, had demanded respect instead of accepting scraps, had chosen truth over comfortable lies. Babsia would have been proud. I was proud too. And that, finally, was enough. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.